those of you who have watched this channel for a little while now already know this, but for those that are new, I used to be a Leopard 2 commander. And in doing so, we bought the Leopard 2A4 in the Singapore Army, and that was the tank that I first trained on. So I get the lovely job of now reviewing virtual versions of the Leopard 2 and all of its upgrades and modifications. So some of you guys may know that the Leopard 2 in Singapore started off as the A4 variant, but then got upgraded to the SG, which stands for Singapore. And what that basically means is that we took a look at all of the available upgrades and picked a bunch of them that we wanted. And so to do that, we had to test out a few different things. And this right here is the tank that was the technology demonstrator for some of those upgrades. This is the Leopard 2 PSO, which stands for Peace Support Operations, which is a fancy way of saying counterinsurgency. Huh? Because that sounds way worse. Now, the keen eye among you already might notice a few things, but for a little bit of background information, this tank began life as a Leopard 2A5. That is actually the base variant that it started off as. It's not a 2A6, because that has the L55 gun, as well as a few other things, but we'll get on that. So it has, of course, the arrow-headed turret armor, as well as the changes to the hull, such as a different driver's hatch, and different side skirts, as well as a redesigned turret rear with different compartment arrangements. Now, the PSO has a few different changes to the A5, including a different turret rear, and this includes a cooling unit for the computers and fire control systems, because this tank has a lot of electronics inside it that need to stay cool, as well as a different compartment here and a lack of baskets at the back, because exposed equipment on the outside tended to get damaged, so we try to get rid of that. And of course, baskets are a vulnerability. They can catch all sorts of objects being thrown into them. But we're not so much worried about the cans, bottles, and rocks that are going to be thrown, because the main defense arrangement on the 2 PSO is defense against rocket-propelled grenades and anti-tank guided missiles. So, as part of this, it has a bunch of armor upgrades internally, which some of them have carried over from the Leopard 2A5, but the ones that you may notice on the outside include these composite screens, or at least what the game is calling composite screen, and these are meant to be more protective against chemical warheads. They're not going to be as protective against kinetic energy. That's not their intention, and you're going to see that reflected in the game. What's also interesting is that this tank, you may have noticed, has a giant blade at the front, and this is not a dozer blade, as it might have been on the 2A4, because that is a completely different system. This is actually what you call an OCB, or Obstacle Clearance Blade. As the name suggests, it's for moving things out of the way and not dirt. So as such, the game doesn't actually have the upgrade available here because it's permanently fitted to the vehicle. And of course, when we go into the test drive or into the main game, there isn't the ability to entrench. It's completely missing. This is a good thing, because that is not how this system works. In fact, when we tested this, it was specifically mentioned to not dig it into the ground, or it may damage the system. Now, in fact, this blade was meant for clearing obstacles out of the way, like the name suggests. Things like barriers and car wrecks and burning tire barricades, and literally any kind of improvised barricade you may think of, that's what this is for. And it's a really, really cool system. In real life, it can actually pose in multiple directions. You can actually change the angle that it points at, not just up, down, and change elevation, but you can also tilt it left and right. There's actually also, yeah, I'd see it just there, looking like a tiny little flashlight. That is actually a camera. So you can actually aim the blade without having to, stick your head out from the driver's hatch. In addition, there are also these. They're on both sides of the tank. They're like little sensors, because that's actually what they are. There were two versions of this that I remember. One was a camera system, like what you see on some of the armored vehicles that were used in Afghanistan. The other was a proximity warning system. Think of it like the reversing sensors in your car, and they were meant to detect things that were too close to you, meaning that you were able to navigate tight spaces in urban combat without crashing into things while having all the hatches closed. And I thought that was a really, really cool thing. But the biggest change that you're going to see is the big booty on this Judy, which is an entirely redesigned engine deck. Yes, this engine deck is completely different to the A5, A4, and A6. In fact, it's different to any other Leopard variant there is, because this is specifically designed to not provide any kind of openings. And you might be thinking the engine needs cooling. It does have it. It's underneath where the exhaust is, as well as these tiny vents at the rear right here. But the lack of openings is there for a reason, because you may know of a certain incendiary friend that people may use during an insurgency, which is a Molotov cocktail, or in fact any type of fluid incendiary device that can actually leak through all of the openings on the top because they're exposed to the air from above. So by covering it all up, it prevents the engine and the fuel and literally anything inside the engine bay from taking damage by stuff leaking into it. It's actually a really smart system. And it does have the side effect, of course, of making the thermal signature of the tank much smaller at the rear because the exhaust isn't blowing outwards, it's blowing downwards. I don't know if we'll see that reflected in the game, but it's good to know that it's there. And of course, this tank has a remote weapon station, which is the lovely 50 caliber that is mounted on the roof here. Really, really nice to see. It was always debated about whether or not it should be a 50 caliber, a grenade machine gun, or a 7.62, and well, this mount is compatible with nearly all NATO systems, or at least can be modified to, so it's a really, really cool system. And of course it has its own set of smoke launchers, meaning that the PSO, at least for gameplay purposes, has more smoke grenades than any other Leopard variant I know of anyway. But by far the coolest thing, or should I say hottest thing, is this. The new effects in the game of heating up barrels, because that's really starting to glow now, and if you ever have a barrel start glowing like this, you're in decent trouble because you're not really going to be using that barrel very much for very long. It does cool off a little bit quicker than I'd like, but hey, the glow at least is realistic. It's not turning, you know, white hot or anything. It actually is realistic. And of course, we have some new firing effects. The barrel smokes a little bit now, which is realistic because that big hump there, the bore evacuator, actually reduces the flow of gases back into the tank when it fires. Because otherwise the vacuum effect would mean that all of the smoke gets sucked back into the turret. And that's not nice stuff to breathe in, so that actually slows it down. And after the recoil effect, then you get that little puff of smoke. It's just trapped gas coming back out. Realistic? Very nice. I mean, I would love it if the game actually did the loading position, which is something all NATO tanks, as far as I know, have. But Leopard is definitely well known for doing that. So when you fire, the gun is supposed to elevate, and then after it reloads, it comes back down. This is an entirely automated process, and the sight stays entirely on the target. And the only reason I think they didn't do that in the game is simply because of it not really being a major feature, and that loading position is adjustable, so you can have it also be 0 degrees if you want it to, because you can adjust it. It's one of the few times where it's like, okay, it's not realistic, but I don't actually mind it that much. I'm just glad that they didn't decide to make this a bulldozer. But of course, before we conclude the little review segment, the rear of the turret is actually the same as the Leopard 2 SG, which kind of tells you a few things. But that is actually the same rear. What's interesting is the SG uses AMAP, which is visually similar to this. This is the Leopard 2 PL. So from the front, it looks very similar to this. But this, of course, is a Leopard 2 A4. So this is probably closer to the SG variant than anything else, but it's not 100% the same because the PL doesn't have the AMAP hull as well, which is what this has. It's interesting, just the differences. Although this technically isn't AMAP either. Part of it is, and it's based on the A5, but it doesn't matter. The point is simply that I feel like every single day I'm waiting for a new Leopard variant to come in, and I'm hoping one day it'll be the SG, because it is such an interesting blend of all of these things. We're not here to talk about the SG, we're here to talk about the PSO, and the newest Leopard of the bunch, the Hungarian 2A4, which, for all intents and purposes, and visually, is exactly the same as a Leopard 2A4 in the German tree. Also, as a side note, this tank is way less detailed than all of the other Leopard variants. It's missing all of its mounted equipment, and that basket up there is suspiciously empty. But yes, War Thunder devs, if you would like to get in touch with me, I'll let you know how to pretty this up with tools and equipment that the actual Leopard uses. And of course, it'll be based on actual public information that you can use. But I do more or less remember where everything goes. Alright, and here we go. Also, interesting thing, those bushes can be shot off by the enemy now. So, bush monsters are no longer a threat. Now, mobility-wise, I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like the 2A5 might be slightly faster. It could just be the extra armor and the weight that makes it just a little bit slower. It definitely feels a little slower. Also, we have weather now. You can see the trees moving in the wind. They do seem to be moving a little bit too much, but it's better than them just sort of being static, I guess. Alright, so something I want to test with the OCB, I'm pretty sure it's just a graphical, like, piece, but yeah, that is a little disappointing. So, hang on, if I attach my tow cable, now I can move it. I know that that's, you know, a heavy armored vehicle, but that's the sort of thing that the OCB is supposed to be able to move. I mean, not a 30-ton vehicle, but like a burnt-out wreck of a car or something, that's what it's meant to be able to move. So, I don't know, giving it some function that allows it to move stuff out of the way could be a cool use of it. Otherwise, it's just a dozer blade that doesn't work as a dozer blade for as far as anyone else cares. I do like that you can see the heat on the rear of that Leopard up there. Those tracks should be warmer than they are, but the fact that the engine deck is hotter is pretty cool. Alright, and here we go. This is the Hungarian Leopard, complete with Hungarian voices, I think. I don't speak Hungarian. So if anyone in the comments does speak Hungarian, let me know if it's correct. As a side note though, War Thunder devs, if you want to talk to me about crew voices, like the English crew voices, let me know, because I do remember some of the things that people say. But right off the bat, this does feel like a 2A4 should. It's no different to any other 2A4. It has the same upgrades, it has the same... Excuse me. I think I missed. I have no idea if I was hitting anything. But yeah, this does feel every part the same as the 2A4 in the German tech tree, and it has all the same modifications and upgrades. So it really shouldn't feel any different, aside from it being Hungarian and in the Italian tree. I do love the new smoke effects, I will say. They look a lot more accurate to the real thing. Previously, they were just sort of a little flash and a pop, but now it actually is way more accurate. Because that is what it looks like. It does look like that. Hello, Abrams. Yeah, I ricocheted. Leopard superiority. I'm just kidding. I like the Abrams as well. I have to say that anytime I say how good the Leopard is, I have to say that I like the Abrams. It's just a legal requirement, or the Americans will come after me. But no, all kidding aside, the Abrams is a pretty decent tank. What are you doing? It's a Sherman. Man, dev server battles are always so weird. Also, the keen-eye among you might have recognized this map already, because this is the map from Atomic Thunder, the recent War Thunder event. And no, this isn't part of some sort of custom battle on the dev server. This map is coming to the game, as I said it should during the Atomic Thunder event. I hear him. I hear him moving. Oh, I got him. I'm on fire. Uh-oh. I don't think I can hit this guy. I actually can't. I can't get the turret down, which is not correct, by the way. Yes, we have this gun clearance, but I should be able to turn my stabilizer off. Or the stabilization should actually turn off with the engine being shut off, and I can manually depress the gun. But I don't know if that's the sort of realism that we're going for with this game, but... So the Hungarian Leopard. So far, so Leopard. There really isn't much more to say about that. And of course, for the rest of the update, China is getting a new tank, the MBT-2000.
Wow.
Hungary also gets a new IFV at the top tier, which for some reason is above the Leopard 2A4. I don't know if they're going to split top tier MBTs for that tree and IFVs or not. It is broken right now. This is just dev server things, but the turret seems to have fallen inside of itself. So that's not the final product or what it's gonna look like, I don't think, but it is definitely very weird. As for its abilities, it has the same gun as the Puma, and it has some guided missiles, which are fire and forget. And yeah, they're pretty cool. But I'm pretty sure this turret bug is gonna get fixed before it goes live. Otherwise, this is a very, very low profile IFV. And of course, Great Britain is not left out in this update, although you could argue that they kind of still are. And that is the Bhishma, which is, I hope I'm saying that right, is the Indian version of the T90. And I don't really have much more to say about that other than it's a different flavor of a target. Oh, no. But in all honesty, yeah, T90s going to the British tree. A little weird, but at the same time, we also now have a tree that has a T72 and a 2A4 in it that isn't Sweden, because they've done that too. But of course, back to the Leopard 2 PSO, and I think it's a great tank to be added to the game. It feels like a 2A5 that's slightly heavier, but as far as gameplay goes, I don't think it'll be that different. This was always meant to be a technology demonstrator. Having it in the game wholesale as it is definitely not really on the realms of being realistic, since, let's be honest, most export countries were offered this to pick and choose the parts of it that they want. It was never meant to be a tank that you just buy and use straight up. It's interesting to see what it would actually do, and I like how faithfully it is modeled. I do, however, think the OCB could have a function in the game that I guess they'll have to figure out how to make that work, but if it had the ability to push wrecks out of the way without needing the tow cable, or even have a buff towards doing it, like maybe it pushed them out of the way faster, it might actually be a little bit more useful, because let's be honest, some of those urban maps, when a lot of your team or even a lot of enemies die in a corridor, that entire avenue just becomes unusable unless everybody decides to tow them out. And this being War Thunder, that means that's probably not going to happen. Having a tank like this, or even some of the tanks with the entrenching blades on them to be able to push things out of the way even more effectively, could actually be really useful in those scenarios. It's not the most pressing of scenarios, but it's still a gameplay feature that could be useful. At least a lot more useful than entrenching seems to be, because I still can't figure out what that's for, other than making a little hole in the ground, which I guess looks cool, doesn't stop you from getting killed. But of course, the biggest change by far coming to War Thunder in this next update is the changes to the economy and to the layout of all the tech trees. We're having vehicles being put in folders, which is gonna make them do one of two things. One, it's gonna give you a little bit more space in the tech tree, but also it means that things become optional. So in this case, I can get to the Roland without getting the 1A2 Leopard. And at the same time, yes, you can go to the Kampfpanzer 70. You don't have to get the M48 Super. So overall, it's not the worst thing. Definitely a pretty welcome change. It's definitely going to save a lot on the research and unlocking costs, because there's suddenly a lot of tanks you don't need to get anymore. But also the cost of everything is going down. So for example, this Leopard 2K right here, I don't think the numbers are final. I don't think I can show that just yet, because it doesn't look like it's going, this is the final number at all. But if you want more information about that, War Thunder's news post about that, it's definitely going to be your place to go and check that out. So back to the PSO. I'm really happy to see this in the game, and the more leopards, the merrier. And if you enjoyed this video and you found it informative or entertaining, don't forget to leave a like, and of course subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. My name is Panzer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.